In this chapter, we'll be considering how drug use impacts the risk of a youth being delinquent, and also consider explanations of why youth use drugs. Drug and alcohol use and delinquency dependency have been identified as the most serious problem behaviors of adolescence. Drug use by adolescents has actually dropped since the 1970s. Alcohol use has also been on a long-term trending downward. On the other hand, marijuana use by teens rose in 2011 for the fourth straight year in a row. Daily marijuana use is now at a 30-year peak among high school seniors. And drug use is on the increase, with high-risk youth in the juvenile justice system, and is becoming more and more commonly linked to juvenile lawbreaking. More juveniles than ever before are selling drugs, too. Young people generally gravitate to drugs that cost less, so beer and marijuana are more popular with young people than other substances. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, often referred to as OJJDP, published a 2011 report that substance abuse was consistently linked to serious offending. OJJDP sponsored a report called Pathways to Desistance, that is a multidisciplinary study that followed 1,354 serious juvenile offenders, ages 14 to 18, for 7 years after their adjudication. This study seeks to determine what are the factors that impact desistance to offending. Some of the factors are believed to be individual maturation, drug involvement, life changes, and involvement in the criminal justice system. A significant finding is that substance abuse treatment reduces both the use of illegal substances and criminal offending. Drugs are classified by the federal government under the Controlled Substance Act, sometimes referred to as the CSA. A controlled substance is placed in its respective schedule based on whether it has an accepted medical use and treatment in the United States, and its relative abuse potential and likelihood of causing dependence. Drugs that are listed in Schedule I have no currently accepted medical use and treatment in the United States, and therefore may not be prescribed, administered, or dispensed for medical use. In contrast, drugs listed in Schedules II to V have some accepted medical use and may be prescribed, administered, or dispensed for medical use. There's a difference between drug use and drug abuse. Drug use can be seen as a continuum that begins with non-use and includes experimental use, culturally endorsed use, recreational use, and compulsive use. On the other hand, drug abuse is when the user becomes dysfunctional. For example, when a youth no longer will attend or perform in school, or there is an interference with social and family relationships, or when the person exhibits aggressive or dangerous behaviors, or endangers their own safety or health. Often, a drug dependent's life starts to revolve around obtaining, maintaining, and using a supply of drugs. Drug use among adolescents was extremely high during the late 1960s and into the 1970s, reaching almost epidemic proportions. Overall rates of illicit drugs peaked sometime around 1979 and then leveled off, and then about 2001 the rate started to decline. The overall decline continued until 2008, when there was some increase in the use of certain drugs. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health documented that there have been increasing use of specific categories of prescription drugs: marijuana, MDMA, which is ecstasy, and methamphetamine. An increase during 2009 through 2010 was driven by an increase in the rate of marijuana use. This table lists the percentages of students in grades 8, 10, and 12 reporting specific drug use in 1999, 2001, and 2010. This slide gives you an idea of the rate of drug use during the past month by grade level of the youth. In 2010, males had a higher likelihood of having used marijuana in the past month. But males and females had the same rate of use for stimulants, methamphetamine sedatives, and non-medical use of psychotherapeutic drugs. One of the greatest failures in attempts to reduce drug use was the Just Say No campaign of the 1980s. This model had good intentions, but did not fully address the complex issues that underlie drug use and abuse. The DARE program, Drug Abuse Resistance Education, was found not only to be a totally ineffective program, but that it actually was linked to an increase in drug use by the youth that attended the program. Pictured is the DARE car, driven by police to increase visibility of the problem and program that was attempting to reduce drug use. The program consisted of police officers going to the schools and talking to students about drug use. Students who entered the program signed a pledge not to use drugs or join gangs, and were informed by local police officers about the government's beliefs about the dangers of recreational drug use in an interactive in-school curriculum which lasts 10 weeks. It is entirely possible that having these conversations with no additional services served as a catalyst to having students talk about the drug use amongst themselves, which opened up the conversations about what drugs were available and where to get them. The DARE program was started in 1983. It was studied and found to be ineffective, so it was revamped and rewritten. It still exists, though it's not very popular, but the newer version does not appear to increase drug use like the old one did.